Hey, this is Lori Lenicky talking about Chapter 6, which is Leadership Competence. Now, this chapter is about the skills and abilities required for a leader's success. Leaders need tools in their toolbox that they can utilize when needed. Leadership is active, it is conscious, and it is focused. Purposeful leadership allows growth in the right direction and allows forward thinking. If you don't have purposeful leadership, most of your time will be spent dealing with the problems that occurred because of this lack of forward thinking. So you'll spend most of your time dealing with problems instead of moving the organization forward. Planning is an essential leadership skill. Leaders who are able to understand, apply, and evaluate planning have advantages over those who do not plan. It's like the old saying goes: if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Um, you will use micro and macro environmental factors, and we will talk about those in a minute, to make sure that you create an outline for success. Planning can be both strategic and operational. So, what's the difference? We're going to explain that next. Strategic planning is concerned with finding the best future for your organization and how you'll evolve into that future. You'll have to make decisions based on the direction of your organization, and you base these on the values, strategies, and goals of your organization. You need to focus on external considerations and how you will fit into the external markets. So, if you think about the PT organization that you are developing for your marketing class, consider what role your clinic is going to play in the health of society or the health of the community that you are in. Operational planning is about finding the best methods, systems, and processes to accomplish your goals. So this is focused more on the internal resources or what you and your company has available to get towards your goals. Um, in physical therapy, think of this type of planning to involve employee productivity, how to best utilize your employees, how to create better employees to get to where you want to be. So planning should be considered something that evolves. It's not a one-time thing. There should still be a vision, but planning is the process to get to that outcome. The ultimate outcome of planning is that vision. And so never stop planning, realizing that the plan you have may have to frequently change. When assessing a situation, you have to look at both the macro environmental forces and the healthcare environmental forces involved. So, what are the macro environmental forces? These are things that are kind of outside of your control. The legal, regulatory changes that happen, political forces, cultural and sociological forces, such as beliefs and attitudes of other people, public expectations. What does the public expect from physical therapy? Economic forces and ecological forces. So in physical therapy, there are many, many PT issues that are legal and regulatory, and we're going to talk about some of those in class. Some of the political could be healthcare acts, Medicare and Medicaid reform, insurance reform. Cultural and sociological changes can be the aging population, how we treat individuals with disabilities of all ages. Public expectations is how PT is portrayed in the media, and what the community thinks of physical therapy. It's interesting to hear sometimes what people think physical therapists do. Economic forces can be payment systems and reimbursement. It can be living in a town where a large company goes out of business and the population that used to have good insurance coverage now doesn't. And ecological forces. I think this is timely now with a hurricane coming, but any kind of large scale devastation can change the outlook of an area. And what are the healthcare environmental forces? And some people call these the micro environmental forces. This can be planning and public policy, such as regulations, licensure, and accreditation. Competitive forces, so other organizations within your area that can be competing against you. Healthcare financing, so third party payers or public and private insurance. Technology, So this is the material, the supplies, being able to get what you need. Healthcare research and education. Has research changed the way practice should be occurring? Health status and health promotion. Is your organization involved in wellness and disease prevention instead of only treating unhealthy individuals? And then integration with other healthcare disciplines. So, how do we integrate with other public health organizations? One of the big things that is changing in physical therapy related to public policy is the Physical Therapy Licensure Compact. And we will talk more about that in class. Once you understand the healthcare forces and the macro forces that are affecting your company, you have to create transformation. Kotter suggests 8 steps for transforming organizations. First, it's establish the sense of urgency. Make sure that everyone involved within the organization is educated on the realities of what's happening so that they're all working towards the same goal. Form a powerful guiding coalition. So whether you have to join forces with other organizations or just unite all of those within your organization, you need to have a powerful and united team supporting the vision. Create a vision. So if the people working for you don't understand what this vision is, and that vision isn't communicated to you, which is step 4, it makes it very difficult for everyone to be working towards the same goal. In the past, I was part of an organization, a community organization in my small town to help athletics in Stedman. And it was a group of 10 or 12 individuals that we were mostly working on increasing funding to get supplies. But we never had a real mission or vision. Everybody was just working to raise money, and we really didn't know why or what our goals were. It wasn't until we elected a president who said, this is what we need. We need goals. We need a vision. And that organization really took off after that. So imagine being part of a big organization, and you really don't have any idea of what you want to do in the future or where you want your organization to go. It can limit the progression. All right, the next steps in transforming organization is empower others to act on that vision. Once you get the employees, whether they're managers or low-level workers, on board, get them to do their job. Empower them by getting rid of obstacles to change, allowing systems or structures to be changed, and encourage risk-taking and non-traditional ideas of activities and actions. Plan for and create short-term wins. Letting those who are helping you know when short-term gains have been made, and then rewarding them for that success is essential. Making sure that everybody understands we're on the right track and heading in the right direction. Consolidate improvements and producing still more change. So once change is realized, allow that change to be part of the system, structure, or policies of your everyday practice. Hire and promote employees who are doing the right thing and who are helping you implement that vision. And then institutionalize these new approaches. Make sure there's connections between the new behavior and corporate success, and that allows for leadership development and progression of the organization. There will always be changes to the environment, whether it's the macro or the micro environment, that will affect your company. And it can cause changes in the cost, the quality, or the access to care. But understanding these changes are essential. So understanding the operations, the workforce, supply chain, revenue management and reimbursement, and the community health status are all factors with working for change. I was working for a clinic that was part of a larger corporation, and to help with supply chain and cost management, all the clinics ordered supplies through one company. We were able to get a better deal if we ordered in mass. This initially was thought to be a great thing. It saved the company a lot of money. But that company that we were ordering from was not able to keep up with the demand. So there were times when we didn't have the supplies we needed to perform patient care. We were very limited by this. And when we talked to accounting, they didn't seem to care. Their job was to save money for the company. That's the accountant's job. But we couldn't do our job. So understanding all the factors involved and not just your own job is often needed to be able to progress a clinic. And there's recently been legal threats to dry needling in North Carolina. Since last year, these threats have been decreased because legislation was um, enacted, or I guess not legislation, but legal rulings were found that dry needling was legal for physical therapists to perform. But had it been illegal to perform dry needling in North Carolina, this would have significantly impacted a lot of clinics. So understanding the environmental context and being able to make adaptations is needed. Right, so the leader's role in planning. People look for leaders to have this vision. They want the leader to tell them where we're going to go. And planning is essential for that leadership to occur. So, in the first step in planning is establishing organizational assessment. So, understanding where your organization is, and then developing a mission, a vision, strategy, goals, and objectives, so you know where you're going. And then the final step is to make sure that action is occurring towards this mission and vision. So the leader also needs to make sure that the mission statement and the purpose of the organization is understood by all the employees. A vision provides how the organization achieves its goals, where the mission defines why. The next time you're in a clinic, I suggest you ask, do you have a mission and vision? You can say, talk about leadership and how you want to know where the company's going. Many companies have this mission and vision statement. If they don't, it might be a good idea to help them design that. Part of planning should also involve goal writing. So just like you would write goals for your patients, you need to write goals for your organization. And these goals need to be SMART goals, very similar to the audience behavior condition degree, but these need to be specific, measurable or meaningful, attainable or action oriented, rewarding and realistic, and timely. Okay? Objectives help you achieve those goals. They do need to be very specific. Okay? Action steps represent a level of planning that will help you describe who, what, where, when, and why these activities are going to occur. When leaders make decisions, you hope that they use a rational decision-making model. They can use quantitative methods or analytic methods, qualitative methods, or triangulation, which is a combination of both. So qualitative methods use values, data, decision-making trees, tools like that are fact and number based. Qualitative methods typically use focus groups, interviews, but they get their information from people. Triangulation combines that quantitative and qualitative methods, and this is much of our theory building or validating and confirming of decision-making process. One decision-making model is the willful choice decision-making model. It's a six-step model that begins with identifying the problem, collecting data, listing all possible solutions, testing these solutions, selecting the best course of action, and implementing that solution. So which do you think is the hardest part? Well, remember when I talked about my son hitting a baseball, we never identified the right problem. Typically, identifying the problem is the hardest part, but it has to happen first. You can collect data and list solutions for the wrong problem, and it won't help you fix what's going on in the organization. So you may need to further analyze what the true underlying problem is. For example, if you notice that your clinic was getting referrals and now they're down about 10 referrals a month, that is a data-driven problem. You can say we went from 100 referrals a month to 90. You need to understand further why that's occurring before you can start this willful decision-making process. For example, if you find that one physician typically referred you 10 patients a month, and now that physician is not referring you anyone, you can determine what the problem was, maybe talk to the physician and see what her opinion was and why she's no longer referring to you. You can then list all the possible solutions and figure out a solution, I'm sorry. But what's the biggest problem with this willful choice decision-making model? Well, how many times do you have to make a decision where you don't have time to identify the problem, collect the data, list all the solutions, test the solutions, identify the best, and then implement it? Sometimes you have to make a decision right then and there. So that six-step model, sometimes impractical. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, and a lot of effort to be able to find the solution. So in the example before of the lack of referrals, say a physician comes up to you and says, I'm no longer referring patients to you because I had a patient upset with a specific therapist. You don't have time to go deal with all of those problems. You have several solutions. You can ensure the physician that you will help that therapist to improve on whatever was lacking. You can say to the physician, keep sending us patients. I'll make sure your patients aren't treated by that therapist. You can say you'll look into the complaints and get back to her. There's so many solutions, but you have to come up with one right then and there because you have the physician standing in front of you and your biggest problem is lack of referrals from her. So because another criticism of the willful choice, because these decisions often have to be made because of an illogical or emotionally dependent problems, you can't always use that willful choice. Sometimes you have to make decisions based on the information you have right then and there, and with the amount of time you have to spend on that problem. The reality-based decision making, very different than the willful choice. Sometimes they call this the garbage can model because all the information goes into a garbage can and you have to figure out right then and there what is the best. So it is based on organized anarchy, chaos, and bedlam. And decisions are made based on a snapshot in time. So in the reality-based decision-making model, technologies are changing, or technologies are poorly understood. There's alliances, preferences, and perceptions that are always changing. And the solutions, the people you have available, and the outcomes are mixed together in ways that can lead to uncertainty and leave connections unclear. So in organizations, there is loose coupling. There's also tight coupling, which is the opposite of this. So in loose coupling, an organization is defined as a more informal and differential focus. So when there's more flexibility and individuals are allowed to have more freedom, that's considered loosely coupled. It allows for more freedom of movement and more risk-taking. But sometimes the strength of feedback determines how tightly an organization is coupled. And so stronger feedback loops imply tighter coupling, whereas weaker loops suggest loose coupling. The way I think of this, if you are in a small organization that has a lot of options of where that organization can go, I think of it as a speedboat. The speedboat's going to get somewhere really fast, and they may change all the time. But their focus may not stay, they may not be as steady. Whereas if you're on a big cruise ship, you're not going to change directions quickly, but you are a more steady boat that's not going to move around. There's good and bad to both. With that speedboat, you have freedom and options to try new things and to go in more places. And with the big ship, you're steady and stable. And so organizations can be anything from a speedboat to a large cruise ship and everything in between. So when you're trying to make decisions, you need to evaluate the priority and the risk of the decision, and also understand how much time and resources need to be given to this specific problem. And are there goals and incentives related to solving this problem? So with decision making, we talked about the qualitative and the quantitative methods and triangulation. But triangulation is a much more thorough method to make decisions. It requires you to both bring in the data and the human beings related to making a decision. Right? Once you realize where your organization needs to go and you find that maybe some employees need to have training, training can be to improve the effectiveness, the efficiency, the efficacy uh, of the employees being able to do their job. So in physical therapy, it can be anything from a new treatment technique to a new management system to their ability to work with patients better within that affective domain. So a customer service driven training. So training, you have to look at where there's a gap in where you need your employees and where they are. So do your current employees lack certain capabilities? And then you need to identify how they can get trained, the logistics of training, and help the employees to get from where they are to where they need to be, realizing that this can be a knowledge, a skill, or ability. Training is required for the long-term success of an organization. I worked at a facility once that didn't want to pay employees to become certified or to have advanced training. That the rehab director of that facility said what typically happens is they get certifications that our company is paid for and then they leave. So this next slide always makes me think of that. So the CFO or the chief financial officer asked the chief CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? Where the CEO will then say, what happens if we don't and then they stay? So progressing your employees is very important. You got to hope that you train them and they stay, but you definitely don't want to not train them and then they stay. So in class, we're going to talk about different types of training that can occur and that all of you will probably have to do within the first year or two of graduating, and then it should continue for the rest of your PT career.